It was early morning in downtown Chicago, and the glass tower of Eaton Tech stood tall under the pale sky. The CEO, Mr. Charles Brenton, stood at the top-floor conference room fixing the cuffs of his suit while looking over the city skyline. Today was not just another meeting. It was the deal of the year, maybe the decade. The Japanese investors were on their way, and everyone in the office was running on edge. The staff had been preparing for this for weeks. Documents printed, translations ready, gifts selected, tea sets polished. The company was hoping for a multi-million-dollar technology partnership. And the CEO was certain it would push Eaton Tech into the global market. Charles was known for his confidence. He was a sharp speaker, smooth in business, and proud of his company's image. Everything seemed ready until a young assistant rushed into the room, pale and nervous. "Sir," she said, "our translator just called. Her son is in the hospital. She can't come for a few seconds." Charles didn't react. He thought she must be joking. "You mean the only person who speaks Japanese here is not coming?" he asked. His voice was low but sharp. The assistant nodded slowly, trying not to tremble. Panic set in quickly. The Japanese team was scheduled to arrive in 20 minutes. They had flown across the world for this meeting, and it was not just about language, it was about respect, culture, precision. Charles ordered 2 staffers to download translation apps. One tried using it on a test phrase. But the robotic voice and broken sentence structure made things worse. "We can't use this," Charles snapped. "They'll walk out." Downstairs in the lobby, a janitor named Mr. Green pushed his cleaning cart silently. He was an older man with kind eyes, known by staff but barely noticed. His daughter, Maya, was sitting on a bench near the security desk, waiting for him to finish his shift. She was wearing her school backpack, legs crossed. Flipping through a Japanese comic book, she came every day after school and waited patiently. Always quiet, always watching. Suddenly, they both heard loud footsteps and shouting from the elevator. Area men in suits were rushing around, one of them saying, "Translator, emergency. The meeting's about to crash." Maya looked up from her comic book and listened carefully. Mr. Green didn't ask. He just kept mopping the floors. But Maya stood up slowly and followed the noise. Her eyes curious, her heart beating faster. Upstairs, the Japanese executives had arrived early. 5 men in dark suits bowed politely. Holding small gift boxes and looking around the room with quiet grace, Charles stepped forward, forced a smile, and bowed back awkwardly. Sweat formed at the back of his neck. He greeted them in English, and they nodded but didn't speak. They were clearly expecting a translator. One staff member tried using an app again. But the Japanese men looked confused. One whispered something to another, and their expressions changed from polite to disappointed. It was all falling apart fast. At that moment, a junior staffer burst into the room and whispered, "Sir, there's a girl downstairs. She says she speaks Japanese fluently." Charles frowned. "A girl?" "She's the janitor's daughter," the staffer added. Charles was about to wave it off, but time was running out. He sighed. "Fine, bring her up." Moments later, Maya entered the room. She looked small compared to the large chairs and polished wooden table. Her school backpack still hung from her shoulders, and her sneakers squeaked softly on the marble floor. The Japanese men looked at her, surprised. Charles crossed his arms and said, "Well, let's see." Maya took a step forward and bowed deeply, just like in her mother's old videos. Then she spoke in soft, fluent Japanese. "Honored guests, I apologize for the confusion. Our translator fell ill, but I will do my best to assist." The room went silent for a moment. Then one of the Japanese men smiled and bowed slightly in return. Another asked her a question about timing. She replied smoothly, with perfect pronunciation and calm eyes. The shift in the room was instant. The tension melted. The Japanese delegation began speaking more freely. relaxed now that someone could bridge the language gap. Charles watched, stunned, as the girl he had never seen before took control of the meeting like she had been doing it for years. She stood beside the CEO and translated everything. She corrected small mistakes, adjusted for cultural differences, and even joked gently in ways that made the guests laugh. Charles started to relax, letting her guide the conversation with ease. The meeting that was moments away from disaster had turned into something smooth, respectful, and even pleasant downstairs. Mr. Green continued mopping, still unaware that his daughter was upstairs saving $1 million deal. Maya never looked nervous, not even once. Her voice was calm, her posture straight, her mind fully focused. She had grown up speaking both English and Japanese, and her mother, before passing away, had taught her how important it was to understand people, not just their words, but their hearts too. By the time the meeting ended, the Japanese guests stood up smiling. They shook hands, exchanged business cards, and even complimented Maya directly. Charles stood there silently, unsure whether to be shocked or grateful. But deep down, he knew something important had just happened. This was not just luck, it was talent, hidden in plain sight. And as Maya walked out of the room, her backpack still on, the CEO whispered under his breath, "Who is she?" Maya sat at her small desk, her notebook open, a pen in hand, but her eyes were focused on the large meeting room across the glass wall. It was the same room where she had helped the CEO just a few days ago, the room where she had translated and saved the biggest deal the company had seen in years. That memory still felt like a dream, but now everything had changed. She was no longer just a quiet girl waiting in the lobby. Now she had an ID badge, a desk, and people greeting her by name. But even with all that, she felt the weight of eyes watching her. Some smiled, but others whispered behind her back. Some called her the janitor's kid, while others just stared in silence. Maya knew not everyone wanted her there, but she didn't care. She was there to learn, to grow, and to prove herself through work, not by talking back. One afternoon, Charles, the CEO, walked over to her desk with a serious face. He handed her a file and said, "We have another meeting with the Japanese partners this Friday. I want you to prepare the talking points and help me with cultural guidance." Maya looked up and nodded confidently. "Yes, sir," she said. He paused for a second, then added, "Good work so far, Maya." Before walking away, Maya spent the next few days diving into the documents. She read every line of the contracts, marked areas that could sound disrespectful in translation, and even added suggestions for how to phrase things more politely. She remembered her mother's lessons about how even small words could show great respect or cause offense in Japanese culture. Maya's attention to detail became her biggest strength. On the day of the meeting, Maya arrived early, wearing a neatly pressed navy blue blazer over a white blouse. Her hair was tied back, and she carried a small leather notebook in her hand. She looked confident, calm, and ready. Charles greeted her at the door, and together they walked into the conference room. The Japanese investors smiled warmly when they saw her. One of them even bowed slightly and said in Japanese, "It is good to see you again, young one." She returned the bow and replied, "The honor is mine. I'm happy to assist." Charles watched the exchange closely. He didn't understand every word, but he could tell it was going well. As the meeting began, Maya translated each sentence with perfect timing. She kept the tone soft, respectful, and warm. The room felt comfortable, almost like old friends catching up, not like a stressful business deal. At one point, the Japanese lead executive asked a difficult question. It was technical, involving international taxes and patent rights. Charles looked unsure how to answer without sounding aggressive. Maya gently paused before translating. Then said in Japanese, "Our team is open to exploring solutions that benefit both sides. We value our partnership and aim to build trust. The executive smiled and nodded, clearly pleased with her approach. When the meeting ended, the Japanese team thanked Maya again. One of them even gave her a small gift, a delicate origami crane made from gold foil paper. "For peace and respect," he said kindly. Maya bowed and accepted it with both hands. Charles looked at her and knew, without question, that she was becoming more than just a translator. She was a bridge between two worlds. As they left the meeting, Charles stopped by the window and turned to Maya. "Where did you learn to handle pressure like that?" he asked. She replied, "My mom used to say, respect opens more doors than power ever can. I just followed her advice." Charles nodded slowly, realizing he had much to learn from someone half his age. Back at her desk, Maya carefully placed the origami crane next to her notebook. She stared at it for a moment, thinking about her mother. She remembered nights when they would sit on the floor together, folding paper, learning language, talking about the world outside their small apartment. Her mother always believed Maya would do something great. Now it finally felt like that dream was coming true. But not everyone in the office was happy. A woman named Rebecca, who had worked in the international division for over 5 years, felt threatened by Maya's presence. She had wanted to lead the Japan deal herself. But now the CEO was giving the spotlight to a high school student. Rebecca whispered to others that Maya only got the job because of pity or luck. One day Rebecca approached Maya's desk and asked loudly, "So, do they teach million-dollar negotiations in high school now?" Maya smiled politely and said, "No, but respect and hard work go a long way." Rebecca walked away, her lips tight, but Maya stayed calm. She had learned from her father that dignity was more powerful than anger. Later that evening, Maya was the last one to leave the office. She walked past the glass conference room and looked inside. It was empty now, quiet, but filled with echoes of words she had once translated. She stood there for a moment, thinking, "I'm not just here by chance," as she reached the lobby. Her father was waiting in his janitor uniform. He waved and smiled. Maya ran up and hugged him. He looked into her eyes and said, "You look tired, but proud." She nodded. "Yeah, it was a good day." He didn't ask for details. He never did. He just said, "Let's go home." They walked out into the evening together, the city lights glowing above them. People passed them without knowing what had happened that day. But Maya knew, and so did her father. She had earned her place not through money, not through name, but through heart, courage, and the quiet power of words. It had been 1 month since Maya first stepped into the boardroom to help the CEO. In just a few weeks, she had changed her own life. And now, people across the company knew her name. Some called her the Bridge. Some called her the girl who saved the deal. But no matter what others said, Maya stayed quiet and focused. She still helped her father with chores at home, still did her schoolwork, and still came to the office after class with the same backpack and same smile. Charles, the CEO, had grown used to having Maya close by. She wasn't just helping with Japanese language now, she was helping him see things differently, how culture could guide business, how listening was more powerful than talking. He found himself asking her questions he wouldn't ask his own managers. Her answers were simple, but smart. She never acted like she knew everything, but she always gave him something new to think about. One Thursday morning, Charles received an email from the Japanese firm. They wanted him to visit Tokyo for a follow-up and possible expansion of the partnership. He read the message twice, then stood up and walked straight to Maya's desk. "How do you feel about flying to Japan?" he asked. Maya looked up, confused. "Me? Yes, you." Charles replied, "They trust you, they respect you, and I need you there." Maya's heart jumped. She had never flown anywhere in her life, let alone to another country. But something in her told her to say yes. She nodded slowly. I'll need to talk to my dad." Charles smiled. "Of course. Take your time." That night at home, Maya sat with her father during dinner. She explained everything: the invitation to Tokyo, the meetings, the flight, the hotel. Her father listened quietly. As always, when she finished, he put down his fork and said, "Your mother would be so proud." "I'm proud too." Maya smiled. "Will you be okay without me for a few days?" He chuckled. "I've been mopping floors for 25 years. I'll survive." 2 days later, Maya stood at the airport next to Charles. Holding her passport tightly in one hand and her mother's photo in the other, she wore a black coat, simple shoes, and had a small suitcase. Her eyes sparkled with both fear and excitement. Charles noticed and said, "You'll be fine. You were born for this." The flight was long, but Maya spent most of it studying business documents and Japanese etiquette guides. She wanted to be perfect, not just good. She reviewed names, company structures, gift customs, everything her mother once taught her, and more. Charles watched her with quiet admiration. She wasn't just translating anymore. She was preparing to lead. When they arrived in Tokyo, everything looked like a dream: tall buildings, blinking lights, crowds of people moving in perfect rhythm. Maya had never seen anything like it, but she didn't panic. She kept walking beside Charles, calm and focused. At the hotel, they were welcomed by staff who already recognized Maya's name. "Ah, Green-san," one manager said with a bow. "We've heard about your skill." The next day, they were driven to the headquarters of the partner company. Inside a tall glass building, the Japanese team was waiting in a private room with tea already served. Maya bowed deeply, introduced Charles with perfect honorifics, and translated the opening words. But something was different this time. They didn't just see her as a translator. They started asking her questions directly about her opinions, about what American youth wanted in technology, about how culture affects choices. Charles sat back and let her speak. He watched as Maya explained business ideas using soft words but strong points. She wasn't trying to sell anything. She was building something: trust maybe, or respect. One of the senior Japanese board members leaned forward and said in Japanese, "You speak like a diplomat, not a child." Maya blushed but replied, "Because I listened first, like my mother taught me." During lunch, they took her to a traditional Japanese restaurant. Maya moved with grace, knowing which shoes to remove, how to sit, how to use chopsticks without pointing. The men around her were surprised and impressed. They even laughed when she told a small joke in perfect dialect. Charles whispered, "You're stealing the show." And Maya whispered back, "I'm just doing what I was raised to do." Later that evening, after the meetings, Charles and Maya sat in the hotel lobby sipping tea. He looked at her and asked, "Why didn't anyone ever discover you before?" She smiled, "Because I wasn't loud." Charles nodded slowly. "Well, I'm glad I heard you." Before bed, Maya video called her father. She told him everything: the questions, the compliments, the food, the view. He listened, nodding, eyes full of emotion. "Your mom would have cried with pride," he said. Maya held back her tears. "I kept her photo in my notebook the whole day." The next morning, they signed the deal, not just the original one, but an expanded partnership. The Japanese executives said they felt deeply respected and understood, and that Maya's presence made them feel honored and hopeful. One of them even asked if she would consider a future in international diplomacy. Charles was speechless. As they left the building, Maya turned to him and asked, "Do you think I could really do that? Be a leader in something big?" Charles looked at her with complete honesty. "You already are." When Maya and Charles returned from Tokyo, everything at Eaton Tech felt different. The news of the successful deal had already spread through the office like fire. But what surprised everyone even more was that the deal was not just signed, it had expanded. The Japanese company agreed to a longer contract. Joint product development and even tech exchanges. It was bigger than anyone expected, and at the center of it all was Maya. On Monday morning, the staff gathered in the large conference room. Charles stood at the front with a wide smile on his face. "We've done it," he said. "The Tokyo partnership is official and stronger than ever. But today, I want to thank someone who made this possible. Someone who joined us not as a business expert, but with heart, respect, and wisdom beyond her years." He turned to Maya, who was standing quietly near the back of the room. "Come up here, Maya," he said. She walked to the front, her heart pounding, not used to this kind of attention. Charles handed her a small envelope and said, "Inside is a full university scholarship. Your education will be paid for by Eaton Tech." The room went silent, then suddenly erupted into applause. Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope and saw the letter. It was real full tuition to any university of her choice. Her eyes filled with tears, but she stayed calm, bowed slightly, and whispered, "Thank you." Charles wasn't finished yet. He added, "And there's more. Once you finish school, you have a guaranteed position here." In international development, the crowd clapped louder. Even people who had doubted her were now cheering. In just a few weeks, the janitor's daughter had become a rising star in the company. That evening, Maya and her father sat on the rooftop of their apartment building, watching the city lights. She handed him the scholarship letter and waited. He didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at it with watery eyes. Finally, he looked up and said, "You did this, Maya, not luck, not charity. You earned every piece of this." Maya leaned on his shoulder. "I just remembered everything. Mom taught me," she said. "And I listened, just like you always do." He smiled. "Then you'll go far, even further than you know." In the following weeks, Maya became a quiet celebrity in the business world. News outlets picked up the story. Articles were written with titles like "Janitor's Daughter Saves $1 Million Deal" and "Young Translator Builds Bridge Between Cultures." A photo of her bowing in front of the Japanese executives went viral. People were amazed by her, inspired by her calm strength and natural grace, but not everyone in the company was happy about her rise. Rebecca, the woman who had once mocked Maya, now felt completely invisible. She had been working in international development for years, but never received such praise or attention. One day she confronted Maya in the hallway. "Must be nice having the CEO as your personal fan," she said with a forced smile. Maya looked at her calmly and said, "He's not a fan, he's my mentor. And I still have to work hard every single day." Rebecca rolled her eyes and walked away, but deep down, even she knew that Maya wasn't just some lucky girl. She had earned every step with humility and effort. Charles continued to include Maya in more and more projects. She reviewed documents, sat in on phone calls, and even helped create training guides for future staff. She never acted like a boss, but people listened when she spoke. They respected her not because of her title, but because of her attitude. She was young, but her presence was strong. One afternoon, Maya was sitting in a quiet corner of the office, reading a book on cross-cultural communication. A new intern approached her. Looking nervous, "Hi," he said. "You're Maya, right? The Tokyo deal girl." Maya smiled kindly. "Yes, that's me." The intern held out a notepad. "Could you maybe give me some advice? I want to do well here, but I don't know where to start." Maya closed her book and nodded. "Of course. First, listen more than you speak. Second, ask good questions. And third, never forget where you came from." The intern scribbled notes quickly, grateful and surprised. He expected someone proud or cold. But Maya was warm, like a teacher, like a friend. That night, Charles was in his office looking through company reports. He paused to glance at a photo pinned to the wall. It was of Maya, standing next to him in Japan. Smiling with confidence, he leaned back in his chair and thought to himself, she's not just a translator, she's the future of this company. He picked up the phone and called his assistant, schedule a team meeting next week. I want Maya to present on cross-cultural leadership. The assistant paused. She's just a student, Charles replied. She's more than that. She's what real leadership looks like, at home. Maya hung the scholarship letter on her wall, right next to her mother's old photo. She looked at both and whispered, I'm going to make you proud. Her father stood at the door, smiling quietly. You already have, he said softly, and turned off the light as she sat at her desk, already studying for the next step. Months passed, and Maya kept growing. She didn't stop after the Tokyo deal or the scholarship offer. Every day, she worked hard reading reports, helping with projects, and learning everything she could. She still went to school during the day, but in the evenings and weekends, she sat in the Eaton Tech office, surrounded by professionals who slowly began treating her like one of their own. One day, Charles called her into his office. He looked serious but calm. We've been invited back to Tokyo, he said. They want us to visit their research facility and discuss a future collaboration. Maya raised her eyebrows. More collaboration? Charles nodded. Yes, they want to explore long-term projects years into the future. I want you to be part of this. Again, Maya felt her heart beat faster. It wasn't just about translation now. This was about ideas. She wasn't being called just to repeat someone else's words. She was being called because of the way she thinks, the way she sees the world. She nodded and said, I'll do my best. The flight to Tokyo felt different this time. She wasn't nervous like before. She felt prepared, confident, even excited on the plane. She reviewed plans for software collaboration, notes on AI ethics, and design ideas for products that could work in both US and Japanese markets. She wrote notes in both English and Japanese. Switching easily between the two, Charles leaned over and said, You're more ready than most full-time executives. When they arrived at the partner company, the welcome was warm and respectful. The same executives from before greeted Maya with smiles and even light jokes. One of them said, You've grown, Miss Maya. And she replied, I'm still learning, always. They took her to the research lab where young Japanese engineers were working on new technology-smart devices, wearable machines and voice assistants designed to adapt to different cultures. Maya's eyes lit up as she explored the lab. She asked questions about every project, not just to be polite, but because she truly cared. One of the engineers, a young woman named Natsumi, began showing Maya a device that helps the elderly walk more safely. We designed this for our grandparents, Natsumi said, but we want it to work in the U.S. too. Maya listened carefully, then gave a suggestion. Maybe the voice interface should offer choices between formal and casual tones. Some American users prefer friendly voices, not robotic ones. Natsumi smiled. That's a great idea, she said. We hadn't thought of that. Charles watched from a distance. Seeing how Maya was now doing more than helping, she was shaping ideas, guiding discussions, and building bridges between people who spoke different languages but shared the same goals. At lunch, Maya sat beside the CEO of the Japanese company, quiet man with deep eyes. He asked her, What do young people in your country dream about now? Maya thought for a moment, then said, Freedom, purpose, and something that feels real, not fake. The CEO nodded slowly. That is the same everywhere. Later that day, the discussion turned to investment. The Japanese company wanted to open a small research office in the U.S., but they were unsure about where or how. Maya suggested a location close to Eaton Tech headquarters and offered to help create a guidebook for Japanese employees moving to the U.S. Everyone in the room nodded, impressed not just by her language skills, but by her understanding of people. That night, Maya and Charles had dinner with a few executives in a quiet rooftop restaurant. The city lights of Tokyo sparkled below them, and a gentle breeze passed through the open balcony. Maya sat quietly, listening to the laughter and conversations. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She just belonged there now. One of the senior partners raised a glass and said, "To the young bridge between our countries," everyone toasted with smiles, and Maya felt something warm in her chest up. Sense of purpose. Back at the hotel, Charles knocked on her door and handed her a small wrapped box. "A gift," he said. "Open it later." When she finally opened it, she found a leather notebook with gold writing on the front. It said, "Maya Green, Global Development Advisor." Her eyes filled with tears, not because of the title, but because someone believed in her enough to give her one. She called her father that night and told him everything: the visit, the conversations, the toast. "They see me as more than just a student," she said. "They're listening to me." Her father smiled on the other end of the line. "That's because you're speaking from the heart. You never pretend to be something you're not." Maya held the notebook tightly. "I want to do this for real, Dad. Not just for one company, maybe for the world." Back in the U.S., the company held a press event to talk about the new partnership. Reporters asked questions, photos were taken, and Maya stood on stage beside Charles as he introduced her. "This is not just a translator or a student," he said. "This is someone who helped change the way we think about global business." The audience clapped. Maya stood still, her hands calm, her voice steady. "Thank you," she said simply. "I'm just doing my part." After the event, Charles sat with her in the office and said, "You ever think about what's next?" Maya looked out the window, then back at him. "Yes, but I'm not in a hurry. I want to build slowly, carefully, and with meaning." Charles smiled. "That's what makes you special. Maya, you're not chasing titles. You're building trust." And in that moment, Maya realized something powerful. She was no longer just part of the story. She was writing it herself, word by word, choice by choice, and heart by heart. It had been almost a year since Maya first stepped into the boardroom as a translator. Everything had changed since then. Maya was no longer seen as the janitor's daughter or the quiet girl with a notebook. She had become someone people looked up to, someone whose opinions mattered, not just inside Eaton Tech, but outside too. Other companies had started to notice her name in articles and news reports. Some even reached out, asking if she would speak at events or lead cultural training for their staff. But Maya never let it go to her head. She still lived in the same small apartment with her father. She still made her own lunch, still studied hard, still helped her father clean on weekends. Her success didn't make her proud, made her more focused, more careful. She knew that the higher she climbed, the more humble she needed to stay. One morning, Charles called her into his office again. This time, he looked more excited than usual. "Maya," he said, "do you remember the Japanese company's CEO? He called me last night. They want to start a long-term global leadership program between our companies and they want you to lead it." Maya blinked. "Surprised me. I'm still in school." Charles nodded. "Exactly. They believe young voices like yours can help shape the future. And honestly, so do I." Maya didn't answer right away. She needed to think. Leading such a project was a huge responsibility. It meant guiding teams from two different cultures, working across languages, time zones, and ideas. She wasn't afraid, but she didn't want to take the offer lightly. "Can I take a day to think?" she asked. Charles smiled. Of course. That night, Gachi sat on the rooftop again with her father, watching the city lights. She told him about the offer. He didn't interrupt, just listened, like always. When she finished, he looked at her and said, "If your mother was here, she'd tell you one thing: if they're trusting you with something this big, it's because you've already proven you can handle it." Maya nodded slowly. I just don't want to disappoint anyone." He smiled gently. "The only way you'll disappoint someone is by not trying." The next day, Maya gave her answer, "Yes, I'll do it." Charles shook her hand firmly. "Then let's make history," he said. And just like that, Maya became the youngest person ever to lead a multinational leadership exchange at Eton Tech. The program was called Two Roads, One Bridge. It was designed to help young professionals from both the US and Japan work together, learn together, and create solutions that made sense for both cultures. Maya helped build the curriculum, invited guest speakers, planned workshops, and even created a digital language tool that helped participants understand not just the words, but the emotions behind them soon. A group of 20 young leaders from Tokyo arrived at Eton Tech headquarters. Maya greeted them personally, speaking fluent Japanese, making them feel welcome and safe. She made sure they had everything they needed, from translators to local maps to tips about American food. She remembered how her mother once struggled when she moved to the US, and Maya promised herself she would never let anyone feel alone like that again. The U.S. team joined too, and at first, both groups were shy. They sat in different corners during breaks, spoke only in their own language, and hesitated to ask each other questions. Maya noticed this on the first day and decided to take action. She arranged a cultural exchange night with music, food, games, and stories. She stood up in front of everyone and shared her own journey, how she was once just a quiet girl in a hallway, how fear almost stopped her from speaking up, and how one moment of courage changed her life. Her story touched everyone in the room. People started opening up, laughing, even making friends. A Japanese girl named Suki and an American boy named Ryan became close and began working on a joint project to build a bilingual educational app for kids. Others started working together on green tech ideas, cultural comic books, and translation software that was fun and easy to use. Maya visited every group, listened to their ideas, gave advice, and helped them keep their minds open. She wasn't just leading with knowledge, she was leading with kindness. Everyone could feel it. One evening, one of the Japanese students said to her, "You're not like a boss, you're like a light." Maya smiled and said, "I just want people to see each other clearly." As the program went on, the executives from both countries visited the training center and were amazed at what they saw. Young people from opposite sides of the world laughing together, solving problems together, and building real friendships. One of the Japanese board members turned to Charles and said, "We have spent years trying to create what she made in a few weeks." Charles replied, "That's because she understands people, not just business." At the final presentation, each team shared their projects. There were standing ovations, a few happy tears, and lots of hugs. Maya stood at the center, watching it all with quiet joy. She didn't speak much during the event. She let the others shine. Because she believed leadership wasn't about being the loudest, it was about making space for others to rise that night. As the building lights dimmed and everyone went home, Maya stayed behind in the empty training room. She picked up one of the thank you cards left on her desk. It read, "Thank you for showing us that language is not just words, it's connection." She held it close and whispered, "This is just the beginning." And somewhere deep in her heart, she knew her journey had only just begun. A year passed since Maya led the Two Roads, One Bridge program. The world had changed for her, but she never changed who she was. She still took the train every morning, still greeted the security guard by name, and still checked on her father before she left home. The name Maya Green was now known not just in one company, but in 2 countries. She had given speeches, been interviewed by reporters, and even featured in a business magazine under the headline, "The Girl Who Built Trust Across Oceans." But even with all the attention, Maya remained humble. She always said the same thing to anyone who praised her: "I was just in the right place, and I spoke from my heart." What people didn't know was that she worked harder now than ever before. Her office was filled with notebooks, language guides, and sticky notes full of ideas. She spent her weekends helping young interns, giving them tips and encouraging them to find their voice, just like she once did, one quiet afternoon. Charles called Maya to the top floor. She walked into his office and noticed 2 chairs set up near the window. Charles gestured for her to sit. "There's something I want to tell you," he said. He paused, looked out at the skyline, then continued, "I'm stepping down next year. I've done my part, and now it's time for new voices." Maya was surprised. "You're leaving Eton Tech." Charles nodded slowly, not leaving completely. "Just stepping aside from daily duties. I'll be on the board, but someone else will lead the future." She nodded, not sure what to say, but then he turned to her and smiled. "And that future is you." Maya blinked, confused. "Me?" Charles chuckled. "Not CEO, not yet. But I want you to take a permanent position in the global development team, full-time after graduation. You'll guide international projects, train new leaders, and help shape what this company becomes." Maya felt like the room had stopped spinning. She had dreamed of building a future, but she never expected to be trusted with one so big so soon. She took a deep breath and said, "Yes, I'll do it. But only if I can lead it my way with listening, respect, and honesty." Charles grinned. "That's exactly why I chose you." Over the next few months, Maya began preparing for her new role. She spent time meeting with every department, not just the international teams, but also the engineers, the marketers, and even the janitorial staff. She wanted to understand every part of the company. Leaders need to know who cleans the floors and who signs the checks. She once said to a group of interns, "Both are important." One day, Maya invited her father to visit the office not as a janitor, but as a guest. He wore his best shirt, the one Maya had ironed the night before. When they entered, the building staff stood and clapped for him. Some even came forward to shake his hand. "Thank you for raising her," one woman said. Mr. Green smiled gently. She did most of the work. Charles joined them and guided them to a small ceremony in the lounge. On the wall was a new plaque, made of gold and glass. It read, "The Green Room Dedicated to Maya Green and her father, for reminding us that brilliance can rise from anywhere." Mr. Green stared at the plaque, then at Maya. His eyes were wet. But he didn't cry. He just whispered, "This is too much." And Maya replied, "No, it's just right." In the following weeks, Maya launched a new internal program called Roots to Rise. It was designed to support young talents from humble backgrounds, children of janitors, drivers, cooks, and cleaners, anyone who had potential but lacked opportunity. "Talent doesn't wear a title," Maya said during the launch event. "Sometimes it waits quietly in the lobby, holding a book, just waiting to be seen." That program changed lives. Dozens of students applied, some from tough neighborhoods, some from immigrant families. Maya personally mentored many of them. She helped them prepare resumes, practice interviews, and speak with confidence. She gave them what no one had given her in the beginning: a voice and a chance. One girl from the program, only 16, said in an interview, "Maya didn't just open a door, she held it wide so others could walk through." Another student added, "She listens like a friend, but leads like a giant." On her graduation day, Maya stood outside the university auditorium with her father by her side. She wore a dark blue cap and gown, the same color as the blazer she wore in her first boardroom meeting. As she held her diploma, reporters gathered around her. "What's next for Maya Green?" one asked. She smiled and answered simply, "The same thing I've always done: help where I'm needed, listen when it matters, and never forget who I am." Her father hugged her tightly, and for the first time, he let a tear fall. "You did it, Maya," he whispered. She looked at him and said, "We did it." Back at Eton Tech, a new nameplate was added to the office door. Maya Green, Director of Global Development and Cultural Outreach. She placed her mother's old photo beside it, the same one she kept in her notebook all those years. She touched the frame softly and said, "I told you I'd make you proud." And as the sun set outside the tall windows, Maya sat at her desk, not just as a worker, not just as a girl who once waited in the lobby, but as a leader, a bridge, and a reminder that the quietest voices often carry the greatest power.